be talking about English literature and its periods. English literature is a vast subject. That's a common assumption of the literature students and the aspirants of UGC NET and SET. Usually it's such a very beautiful subject, and if you like it, you will enjoy it a lot. For the convenience of a study, the literature has been categorized into various periods. In fact, it has been done so for the sake of convenience. There have been two perspectives: historical perspective and a literary perspective. From historical perspective, English literature has been classified as Old English period or Anglo-Saxon period, Middle English period, early modern period, like that. And in other words, we could also find some epithets like Elizabethan age, the Restoration age, the Victorian period or age, like that. From literature point of view, the literary analysis, literary perspective goes like this. We could find from the pre-Chaucerian era, that is Anglo-Saxon period. So Anglo-Saxon period was also called Old English period, that is historical perspective, for the convenience of its study. So pre-Chaucerian period and Chaucerian stage, for about 150 years, the literature has been kept aside. But broadly speaking, the study in English literature goes from, of course, Chaucer, the real man, the man whose poetry in Middle English has brought lots of colors in literature. Chaucerian period, the age of Shakespeare, and the age of Milton, the age of Dryden, the age of Alexander Pope, the age of Ben Jonson, the age of Wordsworth, and the age of Tennyson. These literary periods are the most important. If you want a very exceptional rank or the eligibility in UGC NET, I would like to ask you to focus on these literary periods besides having basic knowledge on other literature of types of literature, like American literature, German literature, and African literature, and Indian writing in English as well. So right from Chaucer until the 20th century, the modern period, there have been many tastes that have prevailed over a period of time. The tastes have seen some change, dramatic change, because in the same age there may be two different authors or the writers who represent not a single idea or the societal element, but rather two different thought processes. For instance, if you take John Milton and Dryden, they belong. Dryden actually was 46 when John Milton died, and the farmer outlived him around 26 years later. So can we assume that Dryden is the contemporary of John Milton? No, we can't. We cannot assume Dryden is the contemporary of John Milton, but rather we would say Dryden is a representative of a specific era, and let's say an epoch which he represented with his own style and thought process and a genre that he chose and worked on, and different modalities that he undertook in order to exhibit his literature and the perspective that he had in English language as well as literature in his own society. Whereas John Milton had represented his own fundamental beliefs as well as the societal aspects in which he was born and brought up. So we cannot assume the writers or the great authors who are born in the same era, do have the same temperaments or the tendencies towards literature. So here, so the topic, that is the classification of periods in English literature, is a very important element that draws attention from time to time, because we, the aspirants of this a very tough and complex examination called NET or SET, have to remember one thing, that we must have thorough knowledge and clarity around all these periods in order to fare well as well as to do successfully in the examination hall, that we find ourselves to be captivated with a lot of confusion as well as disturbance. So to avoid that, be very careful about your preparation and continue so cautiously. Similarly, what I want to ask you is, in the period of the Elizabethan age, I mean the age of Shakespeare, or the lot of literature and the drama that has taken place, and the importance of writing plays and dramas took place, and the Restoration period. What is the basic concept of Restoration period? Why was it so called? And you should be asking yourself about why the age of Wordsworth became rather important. What were the genres that were rather alive at the age of Wordsworth during his lifetime, and the authors, the novelists, prose writers, and the poets of particular area have to be clearly demarcated and studied. You may have some knowledge on these areas, but go deep and find yourself convenient and pick as many authors of that particular period or age as possible to explore and identify the nuances that have been underlined during particular area, and the type of movements that have taken place. So you may need to be rather cautious and so careful about doing this particular thing. And my point here is simply, Old English period was completely dominated by the Anglo-Saxons' preference towards religious matters, as well as the kind of hegemonies, they were rather very important for them. In the Middle English period and before Chaucer, the literature that were produced had seen such a taste. For instance, Sedmon as well as Sinwolf, King Alfred, these guys had the great flair towards that particular religious perspective. From Chaucer, we would find the societal elements and the political aspects and cultural themes and financial matters, how they have governed the society, and the kingly areas, and the queen and king and their temperaments and attitudes towards the subjects, and how the kingdoms were thriving at the time. All these things we would find in his Canterbury Tales. From then on, if you go fast until the late, the Tennyson's age, he represents until the new modern era. W.B. Yeats and different writers who spoke about modernity, modernism, new modernism, and different thought processes. There has been a lot of difference in the literature and its areas. So one has to be thorough with the age, the concerned contemporaries, as well as their particular genres, as well as their specific literary outputs of these areas, and besides some literary movements and forms. To Tottle's miscellany, Angevin period, in fact it's like middle Plantagenet and or otherwise Angevin period. So Chaucer's age is very important, and from Chaucer's to Tottle's miscellany, it's later Plantagenet or Angevin period, and it's also called early Tudor period. Theirs would be Anglo-Saxon period begins with, in some cases, 460 or otherwise 500 to 1340, And Chaucer was born in 1340 to 1400. This is the period where Chaucer lived, in which Chaucer lived. And the age of Shakespeare, actually, when was he born? He was born in 1564 and died in 1616. And the age of Shakespeare was called the Elizabethan age, the Jacobean age, and the age of Renaissance. So these three terms are associated with the literature produced during the age of during Shakespeare. And in other words, the age of Milton, otherwise, age of Milton, if you take, his age is actually Caroline age from literature point of view. When was he born? He was born in 1608 and 1674. This is the period in which he was alive, and his literary period is called the Caroline age. This is very important. So Caroline age. And age of Dryden, if you take age of Dryden, he was born 1631 to 1700. That is the age, 31 to 1700. So this age is actually called the Restoration age. The Restoration age, from literary, the age of Restoration, from historical point of view. And the age of Johnson, actually is called Middle Georgian age, and he was born in 1709 and died in 1784. And the age of Wordsworth is called Later Georgian age, or the age of the Revolution. He was born in 1770 and lived up to 1850. This is the basic information. And finally, the age of Tennyson, he was born in 1809 and lived up to 1892, and his age is absolutely called the Victorian age. Like this, we have the age of Tennyson is literary period, and his age, the Victorian age, is called historic period. So we have to devise the ages like this, and the classification helps us understand the historical perspective as well as literary perspective. With this, I would like to end. I assume that you have got some knowledge on the classification of literature into various periods and ages, right from literature point of view as well as historical point of view. So you please have a specific planning and thorough with your preparation. And let's have more lessons on this. Have a great time. Thank you.